Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another version of JourneyCast here at Skillibrium. I got my Skillibrium shirt on today. I'm wearing the colors, and I am so excited to have my next guest here, Geno Valente. Geno and I go back a ways. We're good friends. Geno, welcome to JourneyCast, my friend.
But thanks for having me. Good to see you, Rob. I'm wearing Mizzou colors today. My son's going to college there, so I had to sport something to support the new home team. So
awesome. I love it. Welcome to payments of tuition. Yeah. I always say, it's an expensive shirt. I have one myself from this.
Yes, they didn't even give it to me for free.
Well, look, I'm excited to collaborate with you, Geno, and today we're talking about leadership principles, and within Skillibrium and within any kind of sales and methodology, sales process, there's a lack of sort of that leadership principle. It's always about the operational cadence and excellence. And Geno, you and I have lived and breathed in that world for decades. That's table stakes, right? What we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how do you lead that charge? What are the principles that really light people up and make sure that they're moving toward the common goal, the common purpose, the mission, the vision, however you want to say it, right? So before we get started, though, Geno, hey, give us a. I know who you are, but give us a quick intro, sort of who you are, some of your go-to-market roles, what you're doing now, and just a little bit about yourself. So I give you Geno.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks so much, Rob. So Geno Valente, I'm the head of go-to-market for a AI startup, Sequoia-funded, called Liquid Metal AI. I've been here for about 2 years. We've gone through a pivot recently, so a little name change, but little branding differences. And we are building a lot of data insights products and AI platform for those that are out building, AI in general. Previous to that, Rob, you and I were at Splunk together. I spent about 10 years there in a bunch of roles ranging from individual contributor to second line leader there. Previous to that, I did a couple of other startups in the semiconductor space, one in the big data space. And I started my career at a company called Altera. I was there about 12 years. It's a semiconductor company. They were acquired by Intel. Being spun back out, it was maybe the best thing I've ever done. And I graduated from University of Illinois with an electrical engineering degree, but got the sales lobotomy in about 2000 and made that switch from engineer to sales, which a lot of people don't do. But I was better talking the talk than walking the walk. So I moved over to the sales side. So I live in a suburb of Chicago called Naperville, happily married. For 23 years now. And I've got 3 wonderful kids, 2 in college and 1 still in high school.
Yeah, great. What a great intro. Thanks so much. And so you started out with an engineering brain, and now you sort of you switched over, and I don't know you as that, right? So I know you as a person that exhibits servant leadership principles and leads with empathy, and really is an amazing leader. I've watched you. You've helped me at Splunk, and I've looked up to you as a leader. So this is going to be great. We're going to get a lot out here, and I want to make sure all our listeners are taking notes and getting those little tidbits that we go through here in the next few minutes we have with you. So. So look, I know you've been successful. That's why you're here. But I want to deep dive into the mindset and the framework of leadership. So obviously you're here because you know what you're doing, and I've seen that, I've witnessed it, and I've learned from it as well. But before we get going, I always love to start with the fails, right? Because we always fail. We fail fast, we learn, we get up. We're in transformation all the time in our life, right? We're lifelong learners. You are as well. You're a lifelong learner. So help the listeners to avoid some of those things. So tell me something that maybe was one of your misses as a sales leader that kind of stuck with you over the years.
There's so many, so it's hard to start, right? And I try to be open with them because that's how you learn a lot. And hiring is probably one of the biggest ones. Especially at a startup. The way I've always thought of it was, if we make the wrong hiring decision, it's a 3, 6, 9 month setback, a lot of time, a lot of money. Right. For the individual, though, it's maybe a career life-changing mistake. So I've always kind of taken that approach that I want to make sure that the person we're hiring wants to work for us as much as we want to work for them. What happens though sometimes is those individuals just need a job. And it's really hard, I think, for me to flush out wanting to find someone with all the right qualities. They have the right mindset, the right expertise. But in the end, they're desperate, maybe, but hiding that and getting and understanding the true why of why they may be looking for a job that we're offering or why they should be taking it. And it turns out there's a lot of professional interviewers out there. And I want to say yes to everybody. They're, just trying to be helpful as much as I can. It's really hard to say no. So one of the things I've been trying to work on a lot more lately is just get better at understanding the person's why. Why are they interviewing? Why are they wanting to go? And one of my best hires gave me this advice, and I've thought of it. And it's almost like if someone that I know and trust doesn't know you very well, can't do it. I'm being pretty tight there. And it's not a hard and fast rule, but it sort of ends up working out that way. And I guess the mistakes that I made is just bringing in the wrong people that then I had to carry the weight for. Now that I'm carrying the weight for it, I can't do my second line role, my third line role. And it just drags the whole thing down. Can we be successful as a team? Yes, but not as successful as we could be if I had made the right hire. So trying to put some processes in place to get those right people. And I would say it was their motivation. They didn't deliver because I wanted to help more. I wanted to help them more than I wanted to help our company. And that was a mistake.
And then you become the super rep, right? Or the super manager, whatever the level is. You'd be, and then you're spread so thin that you can't really give to the others that are under your charge, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I also want to unpack. I want to make sure everybody listened and heard this. When you are a leader and you don't hire correctly to fit the team and the mission and the vision and the why isn't the. I love that you said the why and what's their purpose. I get that. All has to be aligned. There's an 18-month curve that you are not getting productivity because you've got to hire, you've got to train, then you've got to move them out. So it's an 18-month window, right? You see that, you've lived it, you breathed it. So let's make sure we unpack that. I want to say that again, right? You're looking at 18 months of very little to no productivity because you made a wrong decision as a leader.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, because it's not just the hiring process itself, which takes time. The bigger the company, the longer it takes. Yeah. We've changed that process now, at least to shorten it. We do a panel interview. It's 5 interviews in a single day, make a decision at the end of the day, offer goes out same day. Wow. So we're moving quickly in the startup world to try to act like a startup. So we do that a little bit differently. There's some pre-interviews and some things like that happen, but it's onboarding, it's the training, it's the measurement of performance, it's then the lack of performance, it's then the management plan to help them get better, it's then the PIP to manage them out. It's then the window of time to get the rec open back up again and then replace them with the next person. It's probably, 6 months before you know what's wrong, but I bet it's another 3 months to get them out the door. And that's 9 months, and then you got to do it all over again. And that's when productivity should have hit. And it just takes, it's hard, right? We do 30, 60, and 90 day onboarding plans. So you can kind of sense something's going right or wrong. But, the 30-day plan is find the bathroom and, study the material and start learning about our company. And by 60, you should be having some great outputs. And by 90, we can make a go, no go decision. I think that's pretty common in the industry. So that's how we do it now. And it's worked out for us pretty well. Very few. So far, we've let no one go with the 90-day window, but we've had some conversations.
It's funny, as you're telling this story and telling about all these things that are, like all these, I get PTSD from leadership. Looking back at the mistakes I made and the hires and having those difficult conversations, and then just looking at the forecast go 0, 0, 0, 0, and go, what do we do here? And like you said, professional interviewers, and it's just so important. I just, before we move on, I just want to make sure that everybody gets that, and you really need to be laser focused on fitting the person with that culture. And it works both ways. You want to make sure it's good for them. And you said that, the first thing you said, and that's a servant leadership right there. That's a servant leader. Is this the right job for you? And it's a different way of looking at it. And if you look at it that way, you will be more apt to hire the right person, because now there's a culture fit. Now there's a purpose fit. There's a why fit, as you said at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I think that's hopefully people listen to that and heard that. It's not all about the negative, right? We want to make sure that here's the positive of doing that. You get the right person and they're aligned to your vision and your mission, right?
Yep, I can't agree more. I'll add one more thing. And when you're thinking of that onboarding process, think of input metrics, right? Revenue, or if you're looking at a sales individual, and my guess is most of the people watching are in sales, but maybe they're not, right?
Yeah,
it could be in any leader role. If the scoreboard is sales out, or if the scoreboard is in a marketing role, marketing qualified leads, that's important, right? But I think what I've kind of always worded it is 99% of leaders out there are good at understanding the output metrics and measuring them. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but that's what I've seen. It's the 1% that really gets in and understands the process and what input metrics make that output metric come true. So it's easy for someone to say, you didn't make your number, but I don't know how to help you get better at what you're doing. You didn't get this done on time, but when you ask for help, that leader can't answer you. That's the top 1%. And so during that onboarding phase, that 30, 60, 90-day window, if you can think of what input metrics there are, that might be, as simple as how many times did you pick up the phone and actually call someone? How many dollars did you spend on your travel expense budget going out and seeing clients? Face-to-face meetings. I was always taught something called 10-10-24-06. It's a 50-hour work week. It's by a gentleman named Rory Clark, who's an absolute genius in the sales world. You probably had heard me say it back in the Splunk days, but I've used it since the Altera days. My entire life was the first sales training I ever took. And I can tell you, I've read every top 10 sales book ever published in the last 20 years. And at the end of every one of them, I come to the conclusion that I learned that 25 years ago from one guy who's an absolute brilliant mind. His name's Rory Clark. 10-10-24-06 is 10 hours studying and researching customers, 10 hours setting up appointments, 24 hours FaceTime, 6 hours of internal work, internal meetings, internal processes. Those are all input metrics. And so if I can see that the calls are getting set up, okay, is your pipeline not very good? Well, are you making the calls?
Yeah,
I'm making the calls. Okay, but why is the pipeline there? Well, because maybe the message isn't right. Okay, let's go back to researching customers. Maybe that 10 hours is where we can focus. So I've always used 10-10-24-06 for individual contributors to work up through the pipeline to understand the input metrics versus just saying, hey, you didn't sell anything this quarter. And if you want to be a 1% leader, I think you've got to think about the process, not just the scoreboard. It's both. And it's really easy, I think, for leaders to just focus on the scoreboard and not really help the individual with the process.
Yeah, I love that. So 10-10-24-6, everybody write that down. That's really impressive. And I remember you saying that whole concept. And I think what's great about the 10-10-24-06 is that it's measurable. And you always want to measure where you are in your business. And if you measure it once a year, you get that result. If you measure it once a quarter, you get that result. If you're once a month, you get that result. But if you measure it once a week, you're going to get better results. You don't want to wait till the end to measure. So with the 10-10-24-06, you can actually measure it weekly. You can measure it, daily. And that's when you can back up even more. If you're measuring it even more, you're getting more impact from that. So I love that. So hopefully everybody saw that. I want 10-10-24-06. Write that down. That is really cool. And I love that you brought that up. Thank you for bringing that to the listeners. And that's a simple thing to remember. And it's also like I said, a way to measure. And we all need to be measured, and the old, this thing's been around forever. You can't manage what you don't measure, right? I mean, that's just one of those comments we always heard, right? All right, let's flip the conversation. So what's really worked for you. That's the 10-10-24-06 is one of the things, but let's start with the basics, right? So, yeah, look, you and I have been sales leaders for a long time. It can be overwhelming, right? It can be very overwhelming. And so tell me about, sort of your approach to help yourself get in that mindset and to help others as you, under your charge, get in the right mindset. How do you go about doing that? What's kind of your approach? And then I want to get into your philosophy, but I want more, how does your day-to-day work? What's your approach as a leader? It's important, even for individual contributors that are listening to this, or other go-to-market executives in customer success or pre-sales. You want to hear the language. So pay attention, because this is the language you want to hear. This is the language you want to learn, because everybody has to be on the same page. That common language gives you that operational cadence and excellence that we talk about as leaders.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I've kind of broken things down through my career. If you just take all these books and all these things you've learned and all these executive coaches, and you always try to pattern match it, at least I do, back into a framework, back into something I can use, back into something that I won't forget. And so we've all read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so the idea of writing down your big rocks for the week and then figuring out what you do for each individual role in your life. I've taken that not only at a personal level, like I'm a father and I'm a son and I'm a husband and I'm also the chief, handyman of our house and those kinds of things. Those are my roles that I play.
Better than me, on the ladder.
Yeah. And so I do that. I mean, every Sunday night I sit down and I write down the 7 most important things I have to do every week. And it might be, order flowers for my wife for her birthday, or it might be, fix the toilet. It's the thing that needs to be done this week to be, wildly important. So then the question is, is work just one role in your life? And it is, if you think of it from the 7 habits approach. But what I've done is I create 2 lists. I have the work role as a leader and I have the home role, right? And so now I'm managing, let's say, 7 lists times 2, which is fine because they're all the most important. And if you think of being a leader, we talked earlier about recruiting, and I moved that to number 1 because it's that mistake. It's that thing I'm working on. It's the thing I want to get better at. Right. So it's now number 1 on the list. And so whether you're, so it's like, okay, as a leader now I have these 7 things that I need to do every week. And if I can do them on a regular basis, you'll see this flywheel spin. Recruiting is one. And so that if you don't have an open rec, it might be, meeting people for coffee and asking them, hey, when we have an open role, trying to understand when timing might be right, basically building a bench. When you have a bench of people ready to go, then when the rec opens up, it's like, I've got 3 people already pre-approved. Let's get them going and we'll look through it. Hopefully the timing is right for one of them. So recruiting is one of those things that you've got to do every week as a leader in some ways. Mentoring is another one. And so I've got this list of the 7 things you do, right? Recruiting and mentoring. And so the question you're asking yourself there is, who in the organization is going to be your replacement or your future boss? And how are you going to help them succeed in their journey? And so I would always handpick 1 or 2 people. It wasn't usually the people who came to me and said, hey, would you be my mentor? It's happy to have a call, and that's not really the way you go about getting a mentor, is asking them. Like I get those calls all the time. I'm sure you do too, Rob. And I'd love to say yes if I had infinite time, but you have to say no to some things. But when you're trying to build an organization for the long run, what we always call the dynasty, right? I don't want to win just today. I want to win over and over and over again, where people don't quite know how we got there, and now it can't be stopped. So if you're spending time mentoring people, then you're building that leadership pipeline. Great book, just go read it all the way through. But you're identifying trusted lieutenants. You're bringing in them into the leadership tasks. Maybe it's interviewing. They may be a peer of the person you're about to hire, but let's get them doing some interview work. Let's find a junior person and have them mentor them, in some way, shape, or form. If you're constantly recruiting and constantly mentoring, you're doing 2 of the 7 things that a leader has to do every week. So I have to coach the team. And whether that's coaching my leaders on how to be better coaches, or whether that's coaching individual contributors directly, if you're in that first line role, you've got to provide feedback, and you've got to create a system and a framework so that feedback can be received. You're thinking about not just giving people this constructive feedback on how to get better, but all kinds of feedback. And can you create a system where that feedback gets shared amongst others? I, again, had wholeheartedly approached this idea of doing live demos, live presentations. We do that at Liquid Metal. Every Wednesday, I run an all hands for the entire company, and we call it the hot seat. It was a name, again, I learned from the same individual I mentioned before, Rory. And I've just used the name because it's awesome. And what we do it is just live demos. Like, what did you build this week as an engineer on the team? What did you build? Just demo it in front of everyone. And you can go, hey, that's awesome. You should do this. You should do that. Now, I'm not the one always giving the feedback. You've created a system now where feedback is part of the culture, and coaching is part of the culture, where everyone's helping each other. And so that's another one. So how do you mentor? How do you coach? How do you recruit? There's the reviewing piece. There's obviously the inspection part. And that might be, there's so many frameworks out there. We always use MedPick, and I think that's really an inspection for a deal. 1010-2406 is way more on the input metrics, which was what I always thought about. There's others. How many demos did you do? How many calls did you make? How many, whatever is important at the time, figure out how you can measure it and put a system in place so that you don't have to go look for it. It just surfaces. And maybe in someone's weekly, it may be a report or a dashboard that comes out of a Salesforce. But that reviewing piece is important. You got to spend some time thinking about why. What are those indicators that really say things are going well or they're not? And, people have used, hey, we don't have enough pipeline. Okay, well, why not? Well, because we told the salesperson they need to go grow their pipeline. Well, do you think they didn't think of that? You're not really coaching them. You're just reviewing the fact that something they already know. And we created that idea of the boardrooms, and you probably saw me teach that. That's the book I've been hoping to write, but never got around to. And that was for pipeline. Like, that idea came out of just being in the startup world and going to a board meeting and just spilling your guts about what's working and what's not, and realizing that the board is there to help. Right? How can they help you accelerate? How can they help you add value? How can they make this introduction? And so boardrooms was this thing where we get the entire team together and think about pipeline and account positioning and how we go about on growing that business. So you've got to recruit, you've got to mentor, you've got to coach, and you've got to review, right? And so if you're doing those four things, you're pretty much off on the right track. Right? You've got to develop your people. That might be, buying books for individual. I buy about 100 books a year for people. Just what's your address? I'm shipping it to your house. Hopefully some of your listeners were the recipients of those books. And I think anyone who's listening to this should be doing that. Right. It's just, you talk to someone, you're like, oh, I'm struggling with this. And if you've read enough books, there's probably a pattern match to go here, take this book and maybe it will help you. Let's talk about it when we have our next one-on-one or our next coaching session or whatever it happens to be. And ultimately now you've got this framework, and create your own 7. Those are the 5 that come off the top of my head. There's a few more, but just being live here, I can't really think of the others, but
no, it's fine. It's all good.
That's the thought. Make a 7 habits of how you handle your leadership work, and don't inspect this, inspect that, inspect this, inspect that, the 7 things that you do every week. Build a team, mentor them, inspire them, create a vision for them, do all those things that are important that they're looking for you to do as a leader, not just get on a forecast call and blast everyone that they don't have enough pipeline or they're not going to make their number. That's just, that's a bottom 1% leader in my opinion these days.
Yeah, so I want to unpack that. You gave us a lot to think about, and here's what I got. One, you've got the operational excellence and cadence that you talked about as a leader. So, and the things that you do every day. What I love about that is there's 2 things. One, it's they're deliberate, they're measurable, and they're repeatable. Right? That's the first thing that I got out of that, and that's what you want as a leader. You want to be able to do that. And the second thing, which is the most important one for me, and in my job now, what I do for people, is that everything you said is about leaving a legacy. And as a leader, we have to think like that. leaving a legacy, meaning you just said the first thing you said was, hey, let's look at who can replace me. Let's look at, who's going to take over for me, because eventually, right, I'll move on somehow. Those are the kind of mindsets of a leader that is different and sets you apart as a leader. Calling up on the forecast call, and we've all had these leaders that'll say, your pipeline's not enough. Hey, you know what? And then the salesperson will say, well, what can I do? Give me something I can learn from. Make more calls. You got to be kidding me, right? Yeah. I mean, and that just, all that does is just piss them off, right? So, that's not a leader, right? That's a manager. So if you want to manage people, you can do that other places. Go work at McDonald's. Right? I mean, let's be real here, right? A little bit provocative, right? Because that bullshit doesn't work, right? What works with leaders these days is having that servant leadership principle, and that is making sure that you're always adding massive value to every conversation as a leader. And that's leading the person and leading the go-to-market executive. Those are two different things, right, Geno? They're two different things. You've got to lead that person, and then you rise that person. You raise them to that next level. And that mindset is what you have, and that's why you have those 7 things. That's why a lot of those things you talked about is about legacy, is about, how do we get that person to the next level? And raise them up, right? That's fantastic, and that's sort of what I wanted to make sure you got out, and you were perfect. A gray straight man for new rehearsal. It was perfect. I love it. It's right here for you, right, Geno? I mean, this is right here. So what I love about Geno, pay attention. What I love about Geno, and I've always loved about Geno, he leads from here and not the head, right? It's the heart, not the head. Everything he's talked about, and that's the key, right? And still has that operational cadence, runs the business, measures it. He makes sure it's repeatable. He does all the right things, but it's from here. And that's the difference. Now, here's the question. Based upon all that, I put a bow around it for you. Tell us about your philosophy.
Got it. You're gonna
say, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, a couple of things. One, these words just come out of my head, and
I know.
Leader. I think the thing that people have to understand is leadership does not have hierarchy. I was taught that by one of my executive coaches, and I carry that around with me all the time. Right? That management has hierarchy, but leadership does not. And so I've always strived to be the best leader that I can be, whether that's in an individual contributor role or the head of sales or the head of go-to-market.
Yeah.
That means that I want to inspire people to be their best. It means that I want to use my personal power to make them better professionally and personally. And so my philosophy has always been to help people be the best that they can be inside and outside of work. And you're never going to get there unless you're authentic, unless you're operating with humility, unless you're being inspirational, unless you have a vision of where you want to go, then people will follow you to go there.
Yeah.
And so the philosophy is to always be outwardly focused and helping others. And it used to be this comment when I was in my 20s, it kind of hit me all of a sudden. I'm like, I want to be the CEO of a company.
Yeah.
And that's a very selfish goal.
Sure.
That's all about me. And in the end, it was like, no, actually what I want is for everyone that I've inspired to work on the same team or to work for me. And I want them to be C-level executives, which meant I was the CEO. Like, that was the end result. But you think of it differently all of a sudden. It's not about me and myself and I. It's about the team. It's about we. It's about how do we get there. And if I can be the most courageous, with the highest integrity, most strategic, most inspirational person out there, then we'll all float to the top together if we work together and do that. And so my philosophy is help people to be the best they can be personally and professionally. And I wake up every day trying to figure out how to do that better.
Yeah, you and I are perfectly aligned, right? I as you're telling that, I recounted a story in my head. I was at a kickoff, and one of my team members was on the main stage getting this amazing award, And I remember it being in the audience, and I remember in that moment I was actually tearing up a little bit, right? Because it was like I felt that emotion, and I was so happy for that person, and I think that's what we need to be as leaders. It's like, let's raise them up, and they get to experience that, and we get to experience those emotions just as much as them, and that's really important. I think that's a great philosophy, and I think it's one that good great leaders aspire to. And I always say, you want to go from great to outstanding. It's good to great to outstanding. How do you become an outstanding leader? And you just summed it up right there, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think that we're all in a life of transformation. I think that being a lifelong learner, and you're demonstrating that right now. You're always learning. You're reading. You're got mentors like me. We're all, both of us are always learning. We're grabbing things, and I used to say, I don't know if you're a golfer. Anybody golfing out there can listen. If you've seen golf, or if you play golf, I started to think about it differently. I always used to say I struggled with my short game. That's something that everybody sort of, around the green kind of partnership, and that's where the scoring is, right? I always said I struggle with my short game, and I had this moment where I said, I need to change my language, because I'm a big language guy, internal and external. And I said, now it's not a struggle. I am in transformation. I am learning every day. I practice, I implement, and I learn. I'm in transformation. I am not struggling. I'm in transformation. And those that are under our charge are also in transformation. Us as leaders, we're in transformation. If you have the mindset of being a lifelong learner. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. I think your comment there, words matter. They do matter.
Yeah.
Right. And same thing with golf. Like I used to get frustrated as a golfer, like get angry, throw a club, whatever it was. And it hit me like, well, how many times have you actually practiced being a better golfer? Well, I've never been to the range. No. How many times have you been on the putting green and done that? Well, I hit 3 putts before we started the round. Okay, right. Well, when's the last, if you never practice, you're not going to get any better. So just convincing yourself that, I'm as good as I am because I put in no work and I'm out here to have fun. I'm out here to hang out with some friends. I'm out here to enjoy the birds chirping, whatever it is. Right. Versus that is literally a mental switch that goes off. And I think people forget that, every emotion like that, there's a decision point. You just sometimes forget, like, I have to act that way or I have to be angry. Yeah. And it's like, no, you made a decision. You just didn't put enough pause in there to realize there was a point where you could change it. And those words are helpful like that. And when you're leading people, when you're saying something like, well, you're not very good at, I wouldn't call that constructive feedback. There's probably a better way to word it. And maybe they're not very good at this one thing, but it's, how you manage that, how you think about it. Was there a story? Is there a way to be empathetic? Like back when I was doing that, I struggled with this particular thing, and what I learned might help you also. Maybe a better way to approach someone than you stink or you suck at this. It's just the word, it has an impact. And if you haven't, back spinning that all the way back to the leadership part, if you haven't built trust, if they don't think you're operating from a place of integrity, and if you're not vested in helping them succeed, then that feedback just looks like some asshole showed up and is trying to tell me how to do my job. But if they trust you, if they know you're coming from the right spot, and if you've had the results and you've proven to them that by going through this coaching framework with your team, they are improving, then that flywheel will get faster and faster, because you can cut right through the BS and say, I can use some words that are a little more short now because you trust me, right? Yeah. And we have that shared vision, and I'm coming from a good place. And I think, sometimes people forget feedback's a gift, and it's sometimes the sender who's not doing a very good job of putting a bow on it, but it's the receiver sometimes who gets defensive and uses one of their defense mechanisms to flush it out.
Yeah, no, exactly. And words are everything. And mindset is, I mean, it's the words and the mindset, right? It's a, yeah, you heard me, and, I learned this from, the best, right? Tony Robbins taught me the triad of influence. What do you focus on? Focus goes, energy flows, right? And what the language you use, and your physiology, how you show up, and, how you're there for them. Those three things as a leader is so important. Getting back to golf, I think it was Arnold Palmer. I'm not sure. One of the greats said, the game is played between, the 5 inches between your two ears.
Yeah.
That's what the game is played. And I listened to that, and I said, you know what? I believe life is played right here between the 5 inches between your two ears.
Yeah.
That's what life is right here. And it's the mindset you have, and the language you use, and the internal voice you use, and the external. It's all right here. And that's what we have to be mindful of as leaders. And I think that really differentiates the leaders, and that differentiates the leaders that you want to work with and work for, and work around, and that's what it's all about. So,
yep.
I love that. I love your philosophy. I think, obviously you and I are well aligned. But, look, you've been in different cultures too, and like me. You've been in different sizes of organizations, right? Multi-billion-dollar companies, startups, everything in between, like myself. So give me a perspective of how that's different. Can you do a lot of these things in a small company, and the big company is a different? Yeah. How do you play with that? You got to play within the arena, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think you can do them all, and I think you should, right? And we're not hiring right now. Take the recruiting example, right? At our previous employer, we were almost always hiring. I've been in 2 organizations that were approximately 400 or 500 people when I started, and 3,000 to 5,000 when I left.
Yeah.
Right. So during that entire time, we were hiring. I've also been at 3 startups that were 27 people for the whole time, 100 people for almost the whole time. And now we're 9 or 10 people for, the 2 months since our pivot. So, but I'm going to recruit every time. And every week I'm going to look for, all right, what's the next thing? At least you're thinking about the next position in the organization, trying to understand who's maybe a little more overworked, and figuring out, is that a rec? Is that an operational thing? So that cadence, that your 7 things, if you will, that you're going to do to be the best leader you can be, probably is the same. You might put a different lens on it, but I'm still going to spend time recruiting. I'm still mentoring the people on my team. I'm still putting a coaching plan together. I used to do the Mindset Mondays at our previous employer. I think that's how you and I spent more time together.
Yeah.
And, that thing grew from 3 people to 250 when I left. I kept doing them. I still did them the rest of the year. I'd made a commitment, a habit contract from Atomic Habits, that I would do those 52 weeks in a row. And I continued to do them after I left, to an online audience that sometimes wasn't there. But I made that commitment to do it, and so I did it, and then people would come. My point of that is, I still do those same things. The recipe that I had at a very large multi-billion-dollar company is really the same recipe. Maybe not making 5 batches of cookies at a time, but I'm still making 1 batch of the same cookie, right? It's just a little bit smaller. We're still recruiting. You're still coaching. You're still mentoring. You're still trying to be inspirational. You're still setting a vision for the team. That vision is even more important in a smaller organization. Like I'm being part of creating the vision and the culture of our entire organization.
Yeah.
At a large company, there's sort of a culture of the organization, but we were trying to tail onto it. But we were creating a culture for our team. And so sometimes that idea of it's a culture for the organization at a small company could be the culture or the vision for your team. That's where the dynasty came from.
Yeah.
We knew we wanted to be the best sales organization in a very, very large company. And I can't influence everyone except by being the best. And then I can influence everyone. At a small company, it's just getting everyone on the same page, but it's still the same process. It's the same work. It's trying to be results oriented. It's having empathy. It's all these things that you have to do. There really isn't a whole lot of difference. It's just the scale.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was expecting that answer, and I think you're right on. I would expect that you. That's the advantage of working for different companies. You bring those best practices. You bring what worked, what didn't work, right? And you kind of meld that into the culture, and you build that culture. And you're getting to do that, which is I've done that a couple of times in my career, and it's a wonderful thing to do. So kudos to you. You're the right person to do it. So they're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the basic skills that leadership really does need to master. And you talked a lot about these. I just want to kind of unpack a couple of things and just give, there's a lot of information, right? So as we begin to wrap up here, it's like, let's give them a couple of things to go to versus like 7 or 8 or 10 or 12. What kind of new, let's do it this way. How about this? For those listening that are new leaders, maybe it's their first leadership job, or they've gone from first line to second line, or they've gone from second line to third line. I know when I went up that chain to fourth line, everything was different every time. So what are some of the things they can look out for and focus on as they go to their first leadership position, for example?
Yeah. One, I would throw out a couple of things to think about. One is going to be, you have a leadership style that's a natural thing. And when you take your first line leader role, you need to quickly realize that not everyone is going to respond to your natural leader style the way that you might have, right?
Yeah.
So understanding you could use social style like Kiersey temperament, Myers-Briggs, something like that. And I've done this with teams and it worked pretty well. Like have everyone take the free online test and just share it with each other. And then you as a leader, take it yourself and share it with your team so that they understand why you operate, what makes you tick, how you're going about it. You can go that far, or you can simply quickly realize that you might be a pace setter. As an individual contributor, you might have got promoted because you were the best and the fastest at what you did. And now you're going to take a first line leader role and you're going to try to push everybody to be as fast and as good as you were, and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Why won't that work? Because they want to be coached, or they want to be mentored, or they need a different style of leader. And I think reading a book or studying situational leadership would be the first thing I would do. Truly understanding the concept of people who don't know how to do something but are willing need to be treated different than people who are willed and skilled, right? I think a skill will matrix is a thing, right? That I know you guys talk about a lot, and many leaders do, and it's awesome, right? A lot. The way that you mentor and coach people as they move through that skill will matrix, right? A new hire is highly willed and very little skill. They just simply don't know what to do, at least in this organization. They have skills, maybe sales, maybe tech, but let's not say, hey, go out and create this thing of engineers new at a company. And we hired them, right? And so I'm not going to hire a brand new engineer and tell them, great, I want you to go architect this entire system and tell everyone in the organization how to do it. They might be willing, but they don't have the skill yet. They don't know enough about what we built, our code base. I've got to work them through. It would be insulting to give the details to someone who is skilled and willed. You're a player on your team. If you started telling them how to build their presentations or how to talk to executives when they're probably better at it than you, is a great way to not build trust with that team. So as a brand new leader, I guess I'd take this whole skill will concept and this whole situational concept, and I'd start to have heart-to-heart conversations with people on your team, right? You're new to the role, and you need to understand how they want to provide feedback. How would they like to be coached? You can start that just by being empathetic. This is how I would do it. How would you do it? Let's come to a contract. So to wrap that whole thing up, I would say as a first-time leader, and any leader that takes a role needs to really think about the difference between expectations and agreements. I might expect you to do a certain thing because I'm the boss, but if I haven't explained it to you, if we don't have an agreement, that's 100% my fault for being a terrible leader.
Yeah.
So create agreements, and it could be agreements on all kinds of things. Like, when are we going to meet regularly? Is it going to be once a week, once a day, once a month? How do you like to get feedback when I might see something that could improve you? What's the best way to get through to you with that?
Yeah.
Are we going to generate reports, or are we going to meet and write it on a napkin? I don't care. But turn expectations into agreements, because what I kind of say is the gap in those two is called disappointment.
Yeah.
And so if you can create agreements with your team and then stick to it, like earn the trust, deliver. If you say you're going to go, get an executive into town so we can close that big deal, you better get a big executive into town, because they're counting on you to do that. And you made that commitment. So as you deliver your commitments, as you continue to turn expectations into agreements, I think you can build trust in a team that will then operate, set a vision, do all the things that you've got to do, but do it as a group. Like, you don't have to be a super rep and do everything. Yeah. You have to be the team that gets those individuals to be their best personally and professionally. Nothing more, nothing less. Use your personal power to help them do something that they didn't think they could do. And if you do that, then you'll win every time.
Yeah, right on. I remember when I was in the UK and I leading that country, what we did is, the company obviously had a mission and a vision, but I wanted to put together, the UK and I's mission statement, or a real impact statement. So I actually got every team involved, and we had a contest. They all sort of got together in groups, and they came up with, a catchy phrase or a mission or a vision, and then we all voted on it, and we got behind that main statement. And every decision we made, every customer interaction, we would always go back and we would measure it against that statement. Does it fit? Is it part of our mission? And what you just said, that's perfect. Like, getting them involved. There's leading in front, which, you need to have that, you need to have that certainty and conviction as a leader. Yes. But there's also leading within. And that's kind of what you're talking about. You need to balance that and go back and forth, so they know you're also part of the team and you're with them. I always say, where you're charging up the hill, and you'd always have that image, there's the Braveheart or whatever, there's a leader charging up. And I would always say, let's charge up the hill beside each other, right beside each other. And I think that really makes a big difference, because now we're all together, right? We're all in it together. So awesome. You've got all these so many tidbits. There's so many great tidbits here that I hope people are writing down. I thank you for all of this. I want to switch a little bit now to the operational cadence and excellence. So to tell us about your approach to. Here we go. This is what I want to end up on this, because this is really important, and you talked a lot about this. As you look at the ecosystem and the team, right? I used to call it the family, right? And everybody around us that helps you win the customer. How do you, as a leader, what is your role with that ecosystem or family? Pre-sales, post-sales, customer success, engineering, professional services, blah blah blah, right? What's the leadership role?
I think getting them to operate like a team. I talked earlier about the boardroom concept, and that was born out of a culmination of a bunch of things. It's actually changed over time. But what I've seen in these large organizations, and it happens in small ones too, but more of a bigger one, is no one, salesperson needs to drive pipeline, but then when someone tries, why are you in my account? How come you didn't let me know that you were going to make this call to that customer, and now you've just shielded them from ever trying something on their own? To why did the technical person go on that call without the salesperson knowing they were doing it? And this whole circle of mistrust, right? Yeah. That's not team-like behavior. And I've seen that in all these organizations over and over again. So what I've always tried to do is to figure out who the team is and create something where they can start to work together and in a proactive way, right? the book that I was writing that I needed to dust back off was literally called Death of the QBR. Because I always felt that QBRs in these organizations were these backward-looking, rear-view mirror things. And no one ever talked about what was happening in the windshield. So the boardroom was created to be a windshield meeting. It was a windshield process on how we're going to go about letting the account executive be the CEO of the region, but let the sales engineer be the CTO of that region.
Yeah.
And everyone else worked in that. Maybe the marketing person was the chief marketing officer, or maybe the customer success person acted like the customer success, the success officer, or whatever, CSO, right? And maybe as a leader, you watched that happen, and you would insert yourself maybe as the strategic board member who had an idea that the team needed to go and implement and operate. So teamwork for me has always been a big thing. And what you can do with that is pile all the things we've talked about, Rob, into one framework. And you can create your own. You don't have to just use mine. But if I need operational reviews, like how many calls did this team make? How many meetings did you have? How many demos have we had? Whatever your success input metric is, just have a framework that your teams use where that gets filled in every month.
Right.
Now I don't have to ask for it. I can just go look at the board meeting report and there's the answer. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not about how I'm going to review it. It's how the team creates their own monitors of performance. And that monitor of performance is influenced by the leader, but now they're generating those things because they see value in them. Now I'm not just trying to dive into this inspection on, how many times have you met with the economic buyer, or do you understand who your partner is and when they've been in there, and what's the model as you try to think about, let's say, MedPick in this example, right? Then why wouldn't I just use the team to use that framework to build their sales strategy and operate in an independent way so that I can be an observer, not the player coach that's in there. I want a leader to be a player coach. I call it a coach with a helmet, but they can't be in the game on every play. They just can't, right? Especially if you're a second line leader, a third line leader, like now you're not even on the field anymore. You're in the skybox with a pair of binoculars watching what's going on as a third line leader or even a second line leader. Yeah. So you can't make those day-to-day decisions. But if you're a first line leader, you're a player with a helmet, you're a coach with a helmet, and you need to find a way to not put your helmet on for every play, right? Sometimes you just got to be the coach. Sometimes you got to put it on, and I'm the running back right now because this is a negotiation and that particular salesperson isn't the best. So I guess what I'm rambling on about is there is a way to make the team operate as a team.
Right.
And as you hone in and figure out what that is, you can not put your helmet on so much and sit on the side and do more coaching because the team's getting a higher velocity team. But everything that you need that team to do can be part of that framework that they believe in so that they do it without you having to ask. And when you can get that going, then great things happen. That's just what I've seen over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, measurable, deliberate, and, and repeatable, right? That's what you just said, the same thing again, right? It's you've got to be able to measure it, got to be repeatable, right? And it's got to be deliberate and have a process. And that's wonderful. I love that. Before I wrap up and ask you the last question, I love asking this. So you're a book guy like me. You're a lifelong learner. You're always learning. You're always inputting things, right? Getting feedback and mentors. I mean, you name it. You're just like we're a lot alike that way. We're just sponges. What's something that you've learned, like say in the classroom, or from a book, or from a mentor, or that you know what? It didn't work. It's like, you read this thing, you're like, oh my God, this is a best-selling author, and here you go. They got, there's this concept, and then you implement it, and it just falls flat. Yeah, has that ever happened? It's okay. Mm. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 Right on. Yeah. 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 Mm. Mm. I love. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, right. Right. Yeah. That's awesome. I hope our listeners took notes on that. I think this is what it's all about. It's a great way to actually. I'm going to end on that note because I think that it does put a bow around it. The whole leadership concepts and how you do this. We have the privilege, we have the honor as leaders to serve others, and we have to think of it like that. It is a privilege, and it's not a right. It's not something we take for advantage of. We don't take it for granted. We are honored to serve others, and I love this quote. I always tell people, "Congratulations, you're a leader. You're now the second most important person in the room." I exactly. Exactly, and I hope that the listeners got that from this conversation. Just two guys that have sort of kind of been through it, up and down, and hopefully you've learned something from this. And Geno, man, I love you, brother. I just so happy that you came on, and I'm so glad that you shared a lot of those principles and concepts. And I know that our listeners are going to get so much out of this. So thank you for your time, and yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Signing off.